Welcome back to Garden and Grease. I'm Nikki. It's mid-January now, and I've been daydreaming of all the new gardens that I want to put in. And if you're anything like me and you're thinking about putting in new gardens, whether you want to do just one small garden space or you want to transform your whole property into a bunch of garden space, today's episode is for you. This episode is going to be the first in a new series for us, and I believe it's going to be called New Gardens. And this episode is going to be about the challenges that you may face and that I'm definitely facing with transforming our new to us property into the garden spaces that I want. I'm going to go over the challenges that our property is giving us. And I haven't been able to find very much information about a lot of these issues and these property challenges that we're coming across. I know we can't be the only ones. So I'd like to start a discussion with you guys. I would love to see the challenges that you guys are coming across and maybe solutions you have for the problems that we're having, or for other people that are having problems and posting it in the comments. Let's make this a discussion. If this first challenge has nothing to do with you and your property, I'm sure if you stick around and keep listening, one of them is going to apply to you. Okay, one of my top property challenges that I'm going to start out with is we have a septic and drain field. Well, our property is a little under half of an acre, the whole thing, including the house on it, our garage. Well, our drain field and septic takes up about a quarter of our backyard. All right, well, that septic and drain field is really, really old. Now, it's passing all of its inspections now, but we need to plan for a future septic and drain field, which will take up another quarter of our backyard. So right now I have a quarter of my yard being used as a septic and drain field area, and slotting and planning for another quarter of our backyard, which we can't really use because we know it's going to be getting dug up and utilized as the septic and drain field area. So that takes a half of my backyard, about a third of the growing space I thought I had when we bought this property, and it makes it useless for gardening for the most part. I'm trying to come up with some ideas that are temporary, but I don't know that I really want to develop that soil just for it to get dug up and then I can't grow anything there. Now, you really shouldn't be growing on a drain field. You definitely don't want to be growing vegetables and edibles, at least from all of my research. It's just not good practice to do so. And you don't want shrubs and trees on or anywhere near it because of the root systems. And a lot of your other flowers have big root systems, your perennials and such. So you really advise not to grow anything other than grass on your drain field. So a quarter of my backyard is just grass, and another quarter of my backyard is just grass. So if you're thinking about putting in a new garden bed and you have a septic and drain field, you may not have as much grow space as what you think you do when you look out your back windows. My number 2 issue that we have on our property is we have black walnut trees lining the whole perimeter of our backyard. And that's a thing that a lot of people around here have, is black walnut trees. And while black walnut trees may seem really great, people think, okay, cool, you have walnuts to eat. Well, they're not that easy to harvest and actually crack open. And currently, we don't see them as an excellent food source for us. The squirrels definitely think of it as a great resource. But they are pretty and they are massive. Look at all these walnuts. That's our youngest job. Ernest keep. Pick up walnuts. Oh. So So black walnut trees are one of actually quite a few trees and plants that are allelopathic. And I hope I'm saying that correctly. I'll put the words on the screen, but I believe it's allelopathic, and it releases toxins, juglin toxin, into the surrounding area, anywhere where the roots can extend out to or the tree canopy extends out to, essentially. Allelopathic plants actually produce toxicity to stop its neighboring plants from growing, to further its own growth. And like with the black walnut trees, the nightshade family is extremely sensitive to the juglone toxicity that the walnut puts out. But there is a ton of other plants, trees, shrubs that are very sensitive to this toxicity. So doing research on the trees and plants that are currently on your property, it's really important to make sure that they aren't allelopathic and releasing any toxicity into the soil, so that all this energy and money, effort that you put into putting in these new garden beds aren't going to fail. There's multiple other trees, and even on a smaller level, there are like annual flowers, sunflowers, and other plants like that on a smaller level do the same thing to other plants around them. So before you decide to put in, let's say, tomato garden bed, why don't you make sure that you don't have any allelopathic plants or trees on your property? The reason why we installed our first few garden beds as raised and lined garden beds was because we have so many walnut trees, and the nightshade family of plants, your tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, potatoes, they're nightshades, and the juglone toxicity will not allow them to grow. So I still have an issue with it because the leaves come down into the garden bed. Now, I just may be super overprotective, and by having the raised and lined beds, these garden beds are placed out of the drip line of the walnut trees, technically, which in reality is only the very center of my backyard that I can plant in without being within that root system of all of the black walnuts lining our property. But I'd rather be safe than sorry. Along the lines of discussing the big trees that we have lining our property, that also brings the number 3 issue, is shade. Now, if you've had your property for years, you understand where the sun falls onto your property and for how many hours out of the day any area gets sun. Well, if you are new to your property, or you haven't really paid any attention because you didn't think about gardening before, but now you want to, you really need to pay attention to your property for at least a year, so you get all the seasons and you can see how the sun rises and sets on any part of your property that you're thinking about putting a garden in. Now, if you don't want to take that whole year just to observe your property, and you want to get a garden in this summer and you didn't pay attention last year, or your property is new to you, there's a website that I found. I'm going to put it on the screen and I'll put it in the description. And it's a .org website, and it's a map. You put in your address and it will show you on any given day of the year how the sun is tracking over your property. The sun is higher in the summer and lower in the winter, and so it's going to cast different shadows. So think about your trees and all of your buildings on your property. and your neighbors' trees and their buildings, because if you have neighbors right next to you, they're going to be casting a shadow most likely onto your property as well. The number 4 property challenge that we have is we live on a corner lot. Now, that doesn't sound like an issue, but it is. The front part of our property is south facing, so it gets the most sun. So of course, I want to put the most sun-loving plants that I want to grow in my front yard, which is already very small to begin with. But I think, okay, well, let me put some fruit trees out there, some tall, beautiful flowers that want sun all day long. Well, because we're on a corner and we live on a really busy street, we aren't allowed to plant tall plants in our front yard. Anywhere near that corner. That way there's a line of sight for people that are trying to turn onto the busy road. So for the beautiful cottage garden that I want to have out front, a lot of the plants that I want to grow, the flowers and such, are really tall. So I have to be really strategic on how I plant these, and the idea that I originally had isn't going to be exactly what I want. But I'm still going to do it. I'm just going to have to modify what plants I grow and how I place them into that garden space. And I'm still going to have some fruit trees out there. I'm just going to be super strategic about it. You'll see. Number 5 kind of goes along with that idea of using your front yard space and really any part of your yard. So if you want to dig any holes, plant trees, shrubs, or really dig up your yard in any way, you need to make sure that there's no utilities running through your yard, so that when you go to dig a hole, you're not going to hit something and get injured or disrupt service to yourself or your neighbors. And there's phone numbers you can call and a website you can go to put in a request to say put in a garden or put in some new trees on your property, and it will actually do all the footwork for you. At least we have this in our area. I think it's for the whole United States. I could be wrong. Outside of the United States, I would just call all the utility companies in your area and make sure that you are not going to hit a line. They'll come out and they'll mark your property for you. And they did it for me really quick. I think I put the request in on a Friday, and by the following Friday, all of the utility companies in this area had either emailed me, called me, or marked the property to let me know that there was, wasn't, and where a utility was. So it gave me some peace of mind as well. When we're talking about the digging or the ground surface of your property, that brings up our next, and I believe it's 5, our next topic along these lines is it's the way that the water moves on your property, your low spots and your high spots, and making sure that if you're putting a new garden bed in, that you're not creating a water flow that isn't going to be good for your property, specifically your house. You don't want to build up an area and have water draining back towards your house. You need to keep that in mind. You also don't want to create any low, really wet spots where you plan on having plants that don't want wet feet. Okay, and then something that I know everybody has got to deal with at least some point or another. Our number 6 is critters. All right, so what critters I might have on my property may be different than the critters that you have on yours, and how they're going to either dig up your garden spaces, they're going to eat your plants. I know a lot of people deal with deer eating their plants, so growing deer resistant plants along your perimeters or anywhere where they might be on your property, or some people even put up really tall fences. So for us, our critter problems are squirrels, and they love all of the walnut trees around our property, and we have a massive population of squirrels. So not only are there a lot of squirrels and they're taking advantage of the walnuts, well, they like to bury them in every part of our yard and garden space.
Walnuts, them darn freaking squirrels.
They will even take them and place them on the railings of our porch, We find walnuts everywhere. And well, like I said, walnuts, every part of the walnut tree is not good for the nightshade family. Well, they like to bury them in my tomato and pepper beds. So that's cool. Another critter that we have that's an issue is rabbits. Now, they're so cute and I love to watch them, and I don't want them to leave my property. I just have to be creative on how I keep them out of my garden spaces. And when you want most of your property to be a garden space, that can be a little difficult. So knowing what plants the rabbits like to eat, what they don't like to eat, and protecting them, at least when they're young sprouts, young plants. Once a lot of plants get bigger, it tends to not be an issue. But I noticed that I can just have like an 18-inch little barrier fence around a garden area while a garden's still really young, and the rabbits don't go past that. Honestly, the squirrels don't even like going past them, which is really weird. They'll get into my raised beds, but they don't like to go over a wobbly fence, like a chicken wire fence, which I think is really cool. My chickens won't go over the little chicken wire fences either, but they'll jump up into our raised beds.
See this? You see, she just thinks that she could just jump up here and eat whatever she wants when she wants.
Oh, and I guess our chickens are critters that like to terrorize garden spaces too, but I give them a pass. My last topic for this video, that is our number 7 property challenge, is invasive species. We bought our property and it had been neglected for a very long time. The inside and the outside. We had ivy growing all up the house, and I got the ivy on the house and around the garden borders around the edge of the house taken care of, but it's climbing up our trees, and that's not good for the trees. We also have wisteria out of control. I have dug up multiple wisteria, and I dig very, very deep down and pull and cut out as much root as possible, but it's climbing and choking a lot of the trees, which then it's creating limbs that are breaking off the trees and falling all the time. So that's a really big maintenance cost that we have, is trying to get these wisteria out and taking care of the damaged old trees that aren't really going to make it through the wisteria strangling it out. And the wisteria and the ivy are nothing. There are tons of invasive species. Years ago, a lot of these species, like the wisteria, were really popular to put into your gardens. People intentionally planted wisteria and ivy, and some of you may still do that. And that's fine. That's your choice. It takes a lot of maintenance to keep wisteria in check. And I mean constant trimming, like multiple times a year, in order to keep it in check. In the spring, it is beautiful. I mean, people stop and take pictures of it because it is beautiful. But it is damaging the trees that it is climbing up and strangling them out. All right, guys, if any of these challenges that we're having with our property are challenges that you're having as well, please let me know. I'm not the only one. And if you did something to help solve one of these challenges, or you have any tidbits of information, put them in the comments. Let's make this a discussion, not just me talking to you guys, but let me know what you guys have been dealing with and what you've done to take care of these problems. Or if you need help from me or any of our other viewers that could possibly, give you a tidbit of information to help you with your challenge that you're having with your property. Now, this is the first episode in our series, and the series is going to be about putting in new garden beds. We're going to be putting in raised beds, in-ground beds, vegetable, flowers, and fruit trees. So we are starting this process, which the past year, 2023, we only had 3 raised beds in and 1 fruit tree that we put in, just to test the waters. And I didn't want to wait the full year to see how, our property moved and how it reacted with the sunlight and stuff like that. I was really excited, and I couldn't wait a whole 12 months to start putting in new garden beds. We're ready to really start developing it, and this isn't going to be a quick process. It's not going to happen all in 1 year. This is going to take us a really long time, but we're bringing you guys along for this journey, and every challenge that we have, we're going to put it out there for you guys, and we're going to show you how we get past it, and hopefully we can all help each other out. Hey guys, if you really enjoyed this video or any of our others, please subscribe and hit the like button. Thank you for watching Garden and Grease.